Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our academic seminar on democracy in the 21st century, challenges, opportunities, and Indonesian context. My name is Ajeng Prameswari Vinati, with student ID number ending in 167, and I will serve as the moderator for today's session. Democracy is one of the most fundamental pillars of modern governance. It is not only a political system but also a framework that ensures citizen participation, protect human rights, and strengthen accountability. In our contemporary era, democracy faces both remarkable opportunities and serious challenges, particularly in Indonesia, where democratic consolidation continues to evolve. So, allow me to introduce our seminar team members. Our three presenters will deliver the main presentation. The first one is Labiba Aryadillah Putra, with student ID number ending in 138, and then Vincentius Sihombing, with student ID number ending in 131, and then the last one is Stainley Siburian, with student ID number ending in 162. So they will explain the conceptual foundation of democracy, its theoretical perspective, and analyze the Indonesian democratic experience, including achievements, challenges, and case studies. And then, democracy. Why is democracy important? Democracy is not merely a political system, but a fundamental framework that guarantees citizen participation, protect human rights, and ensures governmental accountability. In recent years, we have observed concerning trends globally: democratic backsliding, rising authoritarianism, and challenges to electoral integrity. According to Freedom House in 2023 report, global freedom has declined for 17 consecutive years. This makes our discussion today highly relevant. Our session today will process as follows. One is the three presenters will deliver a 3-minute academic presentation covering theoretical framework, empirical data, and Indonesian case studies. Second, we will then have a 15-minute Q&A session where our two questionnaires will raise critical questions followed by responses and discussion. And third is I will provide a brief summary of key insight, and the last is finally I will close the seminar with concluding remarks. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this seminar follows academic protocols. All arguments will be supported by credible source and citation and are provided in our slides. Now, without further ado, let me hand over the floor to our first presenters, Labiba Aryadillah, who will introduce the conceptual foundation of democracy. Mr. Labiba, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ajeng. Good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to present the first part of our seminar on democracy. Let us begin with the fundamental question: what is democracy? The word democracy originates from ancient Greek, combining demos meaning people and kratos meaning power of rule. This democracy literally translates to rule by the people. According to Robert Dahl, one of the most influential political scientists of the 20th century, democracy is a system of government in which power is vested in the people who exercise it either directly or through freely elected representatives. However, democracy is much more than just a definition. It encompasses several principles that distinguish it from other forms of governance. First, The first, popular sovereignty. The fundamental principle that ultimate authority resides in the people, not in monarch or dictator. The second, political equality. The idea that each citizen's voice carries equal weight in the political process. And the third, majority rule with minority rights protection. While decisions are made by majority vote, the rights of minorities must be safeguarded. And the fourth, free and fair elections regular. Competitive elections are the mechanism through which people exercise their power. And fifth, rule of law. Everyone, including government officials, must be subject to the law. Winston Churchill famously said, "Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others." This paradoxical statement captures an essential truth. While democracy has its flaws and challenges, it remains superior to alternative systems in protecting human dignity and enabling collective decision making. And next. Why democracy matters? Now you might ask, why does democracy matter so much in the 21st century? Democracy holds significance across multiple dimensions. Politically, democracy ensures citizen participation in the decision-making process. Unlike authoritarian systems, our power is concentrated in the hands of a few. Democracy distributes political power among the populace. It provides peaceful mechanism for leadership transition, a crucial feature that prevents violent conflicts over power. History has shown that democratic nations rarely go to war against each other, a phenomenon known as the democratic peace theory. Socially, democracy protects fundamental human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. These rights are inherent in democratic systems. Democracy promotes social justice and equality by giving marginalized groups of voice in the political process. It enables diverse voice to be heard, recognizing that society's strength lies in pluralism, not uniformity. Economically, research by Amartya Sen and other economists has demonstrated a strong correlation between democracy and economic development. Democratic institutions reduce corruption through accountability mechanisms. Transparent, accountable government attract international investment and foster economic growth. Notably, observe that no substantial famine has ever occurred in a functioning democracy, a powerful testament to democracy's practical benefits. Now, let us consider the global context. According to Freedom House 2023 report of 190 countries worldwide, only 89 can be classified as democracies. More concerning is the trend of democratic backsliding over 30 countries have experienced significant declines in democratic equality since 2010. And this makes our discussion today not merely academic, but urgently relevant to contemporary global politics. Thanks. Okay, we go to key concepts and definitions. Before examining theoretical frameworks, let us clarify essential concepts that will guide our analysis. Electoral democracy represents the minimum threshold. It requires free, fair, and competitive elections with universal vote, suffrage, secret ballots, and regular intervals. However, elections alone do not constitute a full democracy. This brings us to liberal democracy, which encompasses electoral democracy but adds crucial protections. Constitutional limit on government power, protection of individual and minority rights, and independent judiciary that can check the executive and legislative branch, and a free press that can criticize the government without fear of retribution. Liberal democracy recognizes that majority rule without these safeguards can become tyranny of the majority. Democratic consolidation refers to the process by which democracy becomes the only game in town, as Juan Lis and Alfred Stefan famously put it. This occurs at three levels: behaviorally. No significant actors attempt to overthrow the democratic regime. Attitudinally, the vast majority of citizens believe democracy is the best form of government, and constitutionally, all actors are accustomed to resolving conflicts through established democratic procedures. We must also consider democratic quality, which can be measured across several dimensions: the integrity of electoral process, the functionality of government institutions, the level of political participation, the nature of political culture, and the protection of civil liberties. High-quality democracies score well across all these dimensions. Finally, and unfortunately, quite relevant today, we have democratic backsliding, the gradual erosion of democratic norms and institutions. This often occurs through executive aggrandizement, where leaders systematically weaken check and their power. Restrictions of civil liberties under the guise of security or public order, and attacks on independent media and civil society. Unlike coups, backsliding is subtle and incremental, making it harder to detect and resist. Theoretical frameworks. Next, we go to theoretical frameworks. To understand democracy comprehensively, we must examine the theoretical foundations that have shaped democratic through over centuries. The first, classical liberal theory, primarily articulated by John Locke in the 17th century, emphasize natural rights, life, liberty, and property. Locke argued that governments are formed through a social contract between citizens and rulers. If the government violates this contract by infringing on natural rights, citizens have the right to be sold. This theory influenced the American and French revolutions and established the principle of limited government with checks and balances. Second, Republican theory, developed by Montesquieu and others, focused on the separation of power among executive, legislative, and judicial branch. Montesquieu argued that concentrating all powers in one entity inevitably leads to tyranny. This framework emphasizes civic virtue. Citizens must actively participate in public life, not merely vote occasionally. The third, participatory democracy. Championed by Jacques Rose, advocates for direct citizen involvement in government. Rose's concept of the general will, the collective interest of all citizens, suggests that true democracy requires active citizenship beyond merely casting ballots every few years. The fourth, deliberative democracy, developed by Jürgen Habermas in the late 20th century, emphasized the importance of rational public discourse. According to this theory, democratic legitimacy derives not just from voting but from the quality of deliberation that precedes decision making. Citizens should engage in rational debate, seeking consensus through argumentation rather than mere aggregation of preference. The fifth, loyalty theory, developed by Robert Dahl, provides a more empirical approach. Dahl argued that modern democracies are actually polarity systems with multiple centers of power. For a polarity to function, certain institutional guarantees must exist: free and fair elections, inclusive suffrage, freedom of expression, access to alternative information sources, and associational autonomy. These theoretical frameworks are not mutually exclusive. Modern democratic systems typically incorporate elements from multiple theories. Adapting them to specific historical and cultural context. This concludes my presentation on the conceptual and theoretical foundation of democracy. I will now hand over to my colleague Hans, who will discuss type of democracy, democratic institution, and Indonesia's democratic system. Thank you for your attention.
First of all, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for Labiba for that comprehensive theoretical foundation. Now, let us examine how these democratic principles manifest in various institutional forms. Democracy takes different shapes across the world, each with distinct advantage and disadvantage. Direct democracy in the purest form, where citizens vote directly on laws and policies rather than through representative. Switzerland's referendum system provides the best contemporary example. Why? This maximizes participation and gives citizens direct control. It becomes impractical for large population and complex policy issues. How can millions of citizens be expected to make informed decisions on technical matters like monetary policy or healthcare regulation? Most modern nations therefore employ representative democracy, where citizens elect representative to make decisions on their behalf. This system is efficient for large nations and allows for specializations. Elect officials can dedicate time to understanding complex issues. However, it carries the risk for elite culture, where representatives become disconnected for their constituents' interest and preference. Democratic systems also differ in their executive. legislative structures in the presidential systems, like that of the United States and Indonesia, the executive and legislative are elected separately with fixed term. This provides pro-executive independence and clear separations of power. The president serves as both head of a state, head of government. Conversely, in parliamentary system exemplified by the United Kingdom and India, the executive is drawn directly from the legislature, the party of coalition. The control parliament for the government, with its leader becoming prime minister. This creates a generator legislative executive fusion and theoretically ensure more conditioned governments. True, it can also lead to executive dominance when one party has a large majority. Hybrid system, such as France's semi-presidential system, attempt to combine advantages of both approaches. This system features both a president and prime minister who share executive power. The president typically handles foreign affairs and defense, while the prime minister manages domestic policies. Each system has strength and weakness. The key question is not which system is objectively best, but which the best suits a particular century, historical, cultural, and political context. Next. Next is Indonesian democracy historical evolution. Now let us examine the institutional pillar of that support democratic governments. Democracy is not only about election held every few years. It requires a robust, well-functioning institutional that operate continuously. First, the electoral system itself must be well designed and impartially administered. This includes election manager, bodies that organize voting, comprehensive legal framework that governs campaigns and candidate qualification, and regulation for political parties that ensure internal democracy and financial transparency. Second, the legislature, whether collect parliament, congress, or assembly, serve three critical functions: lawmaking, oversight of the executive branch, and budget approval. A strong legislature prevents executive operates and ensure that government policy reflect diverse societal interests. Third, the executive branch implement policies and manage day-to-day governance in democracies. The executive must be accountable to either the legislature or directly to voters through elections. Fourth, an independent judiciary protects the Constitution, safeguards individual rights, and ensures rule of law applies to everyone, including government officials. Without judicial independence, other democratic institution becomes vulnerable to abuse. Fifth, independent agencies play increasingly important roles. These include anti-corruption commissions, human rights bodies, electoral commissions, and ombudsman office. Their independence from political pressure is essential for accountability. Serve democracy for a state performing a watchdog function by investigation and exposing government wrongdoing, providing citizens with information necessary for informed decision making. Finally, civil society NGOs, advocacy group, social movement, and community organization mobilize citizen advocates for marginalized groups and hold government accountable between elections. These institutions do not operate in isolation. They form an interconnected ecosystem. When one weakens, the other becomes vulnerable. Maintaining the health of all these institutions simultaneously is the ongoing challenge democracy governance. Next. Indonesia's constitutional framework. Now let's examine how these democratic principles have been applied in Indonesia context. Indonesia democratic journey has been complex and non-linear, characterized by several distinct sides. From 141 to 159, Indonesia experienced what historians call the liberal democracy era. Following independence, Indonesia adopted a parliamentary system with competing freely. However, this period was marked by political instability. Cabinets changed frequently, and the government struggled to address fundamental challenges like regional rebellions and economic difficulties. In just 40 years, Indonesia had 70 different cabinets. Frustrated with this instability, President Sukarno introduced guide democracy in 159, which lasts until 166, under the pretext of returning to original constitution. Sukarno concentrated power in his own hand. Political freedom, where restricted opposition was suppressed, and Indonesia economic deteriorated significantly. This period demonstrates how easily democratic forms could be manipulated to establish authoritarian control. The new order regime under President Suharto represent full authoritarianism despite maintaining a phase of election. Suharto ruled for 32 years through a combination of military backing, co-optation of elites, and repression of opposition, while Indonesia achieved significant economic growth during this period. Often called authoritarian developmentalism, political freedoms were severely the press was censored. Civil society organizations were monitored and controlled, and citizens watched The Asian financial crisis of three massive protests and Suharto resigned in May. This marked the beginning of the Reformasi era, Indonesian current democratic period. The Reformasi period brought democratic change, comprehensive constitutional amendment transformed Indonesia's political system, direct presidential election, decentralization, transferred significant power to regional governments, press freedom expanded dramatically, and civil society flourished. Today, 26 years after Reformasi began, Indonesia has consolidated many democratic gains while continuing to face significant challenges. Next. Democratic. Next. Let me apply Indonesia's current constitutional framework in detail. The foundation in the 45 Constitution substantially amended between 1999 and 202. Indonesia operates as a presidential system within a unitary state structure, through with considerable regional autonomy. The executive branch is led by the president, who serves as both head of state and head of government. Characteristic of president system: the president is elected directly by the people for a 5-year term and may serve a maximum of 2 terms. The president appoints cabinet ministers, who are responsible to the president, not to parliament. Indonesia's legislative branch is bicameral, consisting of the DPR, or House of Representatives, with 575 number elected through proportional representation, and the DPD, or Regional Representative Council, with 136 members, representing Indonesia's province. Together, these bodies form the MPR, or People Consultative Assembly. Through the MPR's role has been significantly reduced since the constitutional amendments. It no longer elects the president or issue broad policy guidelines. The judicial branch comprises 3 main institutions. The Supreme Court handles criminal, civil, administrative, and military cases. The Constitutional Court reviews the constitutionality of laws and resolve election disputes, and the Judicial Commission supervises judge and propose Supreme Court justice candidate. Indonesia has also established several independent bodies crucial to the democratic governance. The KPU, or General Election Commission, manages all elections. The KPK, or Corruption Eradication Commission, investigate and prosecute corruption. And Komnas HAM, the National Human Rights Commission, monitor and investigate human rights violations. The electoral system uses proportional representation with an open list. meaning voters can choose either a party or specific candidate. To participate in elections, parties must meet various thresholds, currently 4% of the national vote to enter parliament. And presidential candidate must be nominated by parties holding at least 20% of parliament seats or 25% of the popular vote in previous election. This framework represents a significant achievement in institutional design, creating multiple checks and balances. However, as we will see, institutional design alone does not guarantee democratic equality. Next. Democratic progress in Indonesia. Despite challenge, Indonesia has achieved considerable democratic success. Regarding electoral integrity, Indonesia has conducted 7 successful presidential elections, each resulting in peaceful power transfers. Remarkable achievement for a nation that experienced authoritarian rule for 40 years. Voter turnout remained high consistently between 70 and 80%, indicating substitutional public engagement. The electoral system is genuinely competitive, with multiple parties contesting election and coalition government being the norm. In the of political freedoms, over 4,070 political parties are currently registered, through only about a dozen compete nationally. Indonesia's press and media are relatively free. Reporters Without Borders ranked Indonesia 73 out of 180 countries in its press freedom index, which, while not exemplary, represent a dramatic improvement from the New Order era. Civil society is vibrant and active, with thousands of NGOs operating across diverse issues. Citizens enjoy freedom of assembly, regularly holding protests and demonstrations. Directionalization has been one of reform's most significant achievements. Indonesia now has 34 provinces and 540 districts and cities, all with leader. Local direct elections, known as Pilkada, have brought government close to citizens and enabled local innovation in governance. While implementation has been uneven, the declaration represents a fundamental reconstruction of Indonesian policy. Anti-corruption efforts, through incomplete, have yielded results. The KPK, established in 2002, has successfully prosecuted hundreds of corrupt officials, including ministers, governors, and legislators. Asset recovery programs have returned billions of rupiah to state coffers, while corruption remains a significant problem. These efforts represent genuine progress. Internationally, Indonesia has gained recognition as a democratic leader in Southeast Asia. The Bali Democracy Forum, initiated in 2008, provides a platform for sharing democracy experience across the region. Indonesia's successful G20 presidency in 2022 further demonstrate its growing global influence. According to an international democratic indices, Indonesia is classified as partly free by Freedom House with a score of 559 out of 100. As a flawed democracy by the Economic Intelligence Unit with a score of 6.71 out of 10, and its electoral democracy score for freedom is 0.52. These rankings indicate that while Indonesia has established core democratic procedure, quality and consolidation remain enjoying challenge. This completes my section on types of democracy, democratic institution, and Indonesia's democratic system. I will now hand over to my colleague Stainley, who will analyze current challenge case studies and opportunities for strengthening democracy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hart, for the comprehensive overview of Indonesian democratic system. Now let us examine the serious challenges facing democracy both globally and locally. Democracy worldwide, including in Indonesia, face unprecedented threats. Globally, we are witnessing democratic backsliding in numerous countries. Hungary under Viktor Orban, Turkey under Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and Poland under the Law and Justice Party all demonstrate how elected leaders can systematically weaken checks and balances, undermine judicial independence, and restrict civil liberties while maintaining electoral fricades. This phenomenon, sometimes called democratic disconsolidation, shows that democracy cannot be taken for granted even in countries with decades of democratic experience. Populism has emerged as a significant challenge. Populist leaders employ anti-establishment rhetoric, claiming to represent the true people against corrupt elites. While populism can mobilize previously excluded groups, it often weakens democratic institutions, promotes extreme polarization, and undermines pluralism through an us versus them mentality that delegitimizes opposition. Misinformation and disinformation have been amplified by social media. False information spread faster than truth. Manipulation of public opinion through coordinated campaigns is increasingly sophisticated. Election interference, both domestic and foreign, has become a serious concern, and the resulting erosion of self-truth undermines the possibility of democratic deliberation. How can citizens make informed decisions when they cannot agree on basic facts? Political polarization has intensified in many democracies. Extreme partisanship makes compromise nearly impossible. Civil discourse breaks down as opponents are viewed as enemies rather than fellow citizens. Identity politics can overshadow policy debates, and governmental gridlock result when different parties control different institutions. Economic inequality pose another fundamental challenge. When wealth becomes highly concentrated, democracy risks becoming an oligarchy where the wealthy exercise disproportionate political influence. Reduced social mobility creates frustration. elite capture of democratic process become more likely and further frustration can drive support for anti-democratic movement promising simple solution to complex problems. Finally, the declining trust in democratic institutions is evident globally. Survey data shows trust in government, politics parties, media, and even elections declining in many countries. This cynicism about democratic institutions combined with further apathy creates space for anti-democratic movement to gain support. Next slide. Indonesia faces both these global challenges and specific local issues. Oligarchy and elite capture represent perhaps the most serious threat to Indonesian democracy. Despite democracy procedure, political power remains concentrated among wealthy elites. The cost of campaigning has skyrocketed. Running for parliament or regional office requires enormous financial resources, effectively excluding ordinary citizens from political competition. Dynasty politics is emerging, with families establishing political lineage. The practice of money politics, vote buying, and other forms of electoral corruption remains widespread, particularly in local elections. Corruption, despite KPK's efforts, persists throughout the political system. Regional government corruption is endemic, with numerous governors and mayors convicted of bribery and embezzlement. Judicial corruption undermines the rule of law. Some judges have been caught accepting briefs to influence verdicts. The World Bank estimates corruption costs Indonesia to 2-3% of GDP annually. Diverting resources from public service and development, religious intolerance has increased in recent years. Rising religious conservatism has led to growing discrimination against minorities, including religious minorities and LGBTQ individuals. Indonesia's blasphemy law has been used to persecute individuals and groups. This trend threatens Indonesian tradition of pluralism and Pancasila principle of religious tolerance. Weak political parties undermine democratic polity. Indonesian parties are primarily personality-based rather than ideology-based. They lack coherent policy platforms and distinct political visions. Internal party democracy is weak, leaders often dominate without accountability to members. Party switching, known as putolacak or jumping fleas, is common as politicians change parties opportunistically. Political scientists describe Indonesian party system as a cartel. The main parties operate to preserve their collective dominance rather than competing to represent different constituencies. Military and police influence in politics remains concerning. While the military has formally left politics, the legacy of Wifungsi military's dual function doctrine under Suharto persists. Military officers continue transitioning to politics, and police autonomy from civilian control remains problematic in some areas. Regional inequality creates political tension. Development remains Jakarta-centric, while outer regions, particularly in eastern Indonesia, lag behind. The Papua conflict, rooted in grievances of marginalization and human rights abuse, continues. Service delivery is uneven, quality of education, healthcare, and infrastructure varies dramatically across regions. Regulatory challenges have emerged recently. Controversial laws like the ETA law, which criminalizes online defamation, have been used to suppress criticism. The 2020 job suppression law passed hastily with limited consultation sparked massive protests. The 2019 repression weakening the KPK particularly concerns civil society and anti-corruption advocates. Constitutional court decisions have sometimes been questioned, particularly when they appear politically motivated. Next slide. Let me illustrate some of these challenges to the 2024 presidential election. Indonesia held its eighth presidential election on February 14, 2024. With over 204 million registered voters, 3 tickets compete Prabowo Subianto paired with Gibran Rakabuming Raka, Anies Baswedan with Khumaeni Iskandar, and Ganjar Pranowo with Mahfud MD. However, several controversial issues raise concern about democratic quality. First, the Constitutional Court decision allowing Gibran Rakabuming Raka, Presiden Jokowi's son, to run despite not meeting the age requirement of 43 firestorm of criticism. Gibran was only 36 but could run because he held an elected position as mayor of Solo. What made this particularly controversial was the Constitutional Court Chief Justice who issued this decision was Anwar Usman, President Jokowi brother-in-law. Although Anwar Usman was eventually removed for ethics violation, the decision stood raising serious questions about judicial independence and integrity. Second, incumbent influences throughout the campaign was unprecedented. President Jokowi made clear his support for Prabowo Gibran, appearing with the app rallies and using state resources for implicit campaign purposes. While incumbent presidents often have preferred successors, the extent of Jokowi involvement raised concern about fair competition and state neutrality. Third, this election highlighted the emergence of dynasty politics in Indonesia. Not only was Gibran running as vice presidential candidate, but Jokowi younger son Kaisang entered politics by becoming chairman of KSI, a political party. This pattern prominent politicians establishing family political dynasties mirror trends in other Asian democracies like the Philippines and raise question about whether Indonesia is developing a form of electoral aristocracy. The results show Prabowo Gibran winning decisively with 88.6% of the vote. The election was peaceful and the results were expected. Positive signs of democratic stability. However, the controversies surrounding the process have sparked debate about whether Indonesia is experiencing democratic consolidation or democratic backsliding. This case study demonstrates a crucial point. Democracy is not merely about holding election. The quality of democracy depends on the integrity of institutions, the fairness of process, and the genuine competitive of political contest. Next slide. The two contextual Indonesian democratic trajectory. Let us briefly compare it with 3 other Asian countries. Taiwan represents a democratic success story. Like Indonesia, Taiwan transition from authoritarian rule in Taiwan case, the country's martial law from 1949 to 1987. Taiwan's democratization has been remarkably successful with peaceful power transfer between parties, strong institution, and high democratic quality. The Economic Intelligence Unit ranks Taiwan democracy at 8.94 of 10, placing it among the world's top democracies. Taiwan demonstrates that Asian societies can sustain high quality democracy. Key factors include strong rule of law, a genuinely free press, clean election, and vibrant civil society. Thailand presents a contrasting picture. Thailand has experienced 13 successful military coups since 1932, creating a cycle where democracy emerges face challenge and is then overthrown by military intervention. Thailand's monarchy plays a complex political role, and the military continues to view itself as the ultimate guardian of national interests. Currently, Thailand operates as a hybrid regime, holding an election but with several restrictions on political competition and expression. Thailand shows how difficult democratic consolidation can be when powerful institutions remain unwilling to accept democratic rules. The Philippines demonstrates democracy ups and downs after ending the Marcos dictatorship in 1986. The Philippines established a federal democracy with strong civil society and free media. However, President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs, which resulted in thousands of extrajudicial killings, raised serious concern about human rights and rule of law. Press freedom faced pressure with journalists being harassed and killed. The 2022 return of the Marcos family to power with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. elected president as another contact center. The Philippines shows that democracy can regress even in countries with strong democratic movement. What lesson can Indonesia draw from this case? First, institutional strength matters fundamentally. Our success stems partly from building robust institutions that can withstand political pressure. Second, civil society vigilance is essential. Democratic recycling occurs when citizens become complacent. Third, democratic consolidation is not automatic or irreversible. Countries can slide backward. Fourth, economic development does not automatically guarantee democracy. Singapore and China demonstrate that economic growth can occur under authoritarianism, while the Philippines shows that democracy can survive economic challenge. Fifth, constant vigilance is required. Democracy is not a destination but an ongoing process of maintenance and improvement. Next slide. Despite these challenges, Indonesia has significant opportunities to strengthen its democracy. Indonesia's demographic dividend is substantial. Over half the population, 53%, is under 30 years old. This young, tech-savvy generation grew up in democratic Indonesia, never experiencing authoritarianism directly. They are active on social media, engaged in digital activism, and potentially represent a force for democratic renewal. Indonesia's strong civil society provides constant pressure for accountability and reform. Active NGOs and advocacy groups monitor government, expose corruption, and mobilize citizens. Student movements have historically played crucial roles in Indonesian politics from the 1966 transition to the 1998 reformation. This tradition continues today. Decentralization, despite its challenge, creates opportunities for democratic innovation. Local governments can serve as laboratories for governance experiments. Citizens interact more directly with local officials, potentially strengthening accountability. Democratic learning at the local level can inform national level reform. Finally, Indonesia's regional leadership position provides both opportunity and responsibility. As ASEAN large democracy, Indonesia can advocate for democratic values regionally. The Bali Democracy Forum offers a platform for sharing experience. Indonesia's soft power will be leveraged to promote democratic norms. What concrete recommendations can we make? For institutional reforms, strengthen KPK independence by reversing weakening amendments. Implement comprehensive judicial reform to ensure transparency and accountability. Reform electoral finance to reduce money politics. Promote internal party democracy through regulation and strengthen separation of power to prevent executive overreach. For social reforms, enhance civic education in school and universities to build informed citizenship. Implement media literacy programs to combat misinformation. Protect minority rights through stronger legal support and enforcement. And develop comprehensive strategies to combat online and offline misinformation. For political reform, reduce money politics through stricter campaign, finance regulation, and enforcement. ensure transparent campaign finance with a real-time disclosure, build merit-based bureaucracy insulted from political pressure, and consider anti-dynasty regulation to prevent entrenchment of political families. This reform requires political will, civil society pressure, and sustained citizen engagement. Democracy improvement is gradual work, not dramatic revolution. Next slide. Let me conclude our presentation with several key takeaways. First, democracy is a process, not a destination. It requires constant vigilance, participation, and maintenance. Democratic institutions can weaken if citizens become obsolescent. As Thomas Jefferson wrote, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Second, Indonesia's democratic journey is significant. Transitioning from 4 decades of authoritarianism to a functional democracy in just 20 years represents a remarkable achievement. While challenges remain, Indonesia's accomplishment, regular free election, vibrant civil society, relatively free press, peaceful power transfer should not be taken for granted. Third, global and local challenges are interconnected. Populism, polarization, and misinformation threaten democracy worldwide. Indonesia faces these universal challenges plus unique local issues like oligarchy, religious intolerance, and regional inequality. Understanding these connections helps develop more effective response. Fourth, citizen participation is crucial. Democracy requires active, informed citizens, not just vote who show up every 5 years. Between elections, citizens must monitor government, hold officials accountable, participate in civil society, and engage in public discourse. Democracy is strengthened or weakened by daily choice citizens make about civic engagement. Fifth, institutional safeguards must be protected. And independent judiciary, free press, strong anti-corruption bodies, and meaningful checks and balance. These institutional pillars support democracy. When any weakens, the entire system becomes vulnerable. Citizens must defend this institution, even when, especially when they produce outcomes we may not like. Let me leave you with a final thought. Democracy is not just about voting every 5 years. It is about daily participation, accountability, transparency, and respect for human rights. The quality of our democracy ultimately depends on the quality of our citizenship. Each of us bears responsibility for maintaining and improving democratic governance. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for your attention. We now welcome questions from our presenters and look forward to our discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Labiba, Hans, and Stainley for the comprehensive and insightful presentation. Okay, so we will process to our question and answer session, which will last approximately 15 minutes. This is an opportunity to delve clear into specific aspect of the presentation, clarify concept, and explore implication. Our two questioners will each pose two critical questions to our presenters. After the presenter's response, our questioner may engage with each other point, fostering a dynamic academic discussion. I would now like to invite Aryadillah to begin with your first question. Please present.
Thank you, Moderator. I would like to direct my first question to all three present. In your presentation, you discussed various theoretical frameworks of democracy, from classical liberal theory to deliberative democracy However, I noticed that most of three theories origin in Western context, particular Europe and North America, and more developed based on Western historical experience. My question is, to what extent are these Western democratic theoretical applicable to non-Western context like Indonesia? Given Indonesia distinct cultural values such as musyawarah mufakat or deliberation and consensus, gotong royong or communal cooperation, and accessible dialogue, should we not develop indigenous democratic theory more suited to our social and cultural context? Or are democratic principles sufficiently universal that Western theories can be applied with minor modification? I am interested in your thought on the tension between democratic, universal, and cultural relative.
Okay. Thank you for this excellent and critically important question. The relationship between Western democratic theory and non-Western context is indeed one of the most significant debates in comparative political science. Let me address this in three parts. First, I acknowledge your point entirely. The democratic theories I present from Locke to Habermas were indeed developed in Western context based on Western historical experience. The social contract tradition, for example, emerged from specific European conflict between monarch and emerging bourgeoisie. These theories do carry certain cultural assumptions about individualism, the relationship between state and society, and the nature of political community. Second, however, I would argue that certain core democratic principles are indeed universal, not in the sense that they are exclusively Western, but in the sense that they respond to universal human needs and aspirations. The desire for dignity, for voice in decisions affecting one's life, for protection from arbitrary power, these are not culturally specific. Amartya Sen has argued compellingly that democracy is not a Western invention, but rather a universal value that manifests in different forms across cultures. He points to traditions of public deliberation in ancient India, for example. Third, and the most importantly, I believe, the solution is not to choose between wholesale adoption of Western theories or complete rejection in favor of purely indigenous alternatives. Rather, we should engage in what political theories call creative adaptation or constitutional borrowing with modification. Indonesia actually provides an excellent example of this. Pancasila democracy represents precisely this kind of creative adaptation. It takes universal democratic principles but interprets them through Indonesian cultural and philosophical lens.
I would add several practical observations for Indonesia's experience. Indonesia's founding father faced precisely this question in 1940s. They did not simply copy Western democratic models. Instead, they developed Pancasila democracy and attempt to synthesize universal democratic principles with Indonesian cultural and philosophical traditions. The 1945 Constitution original emphasis on kekeluargaan, family principle, and musyawarah. Deliberation represent effort to create indigenous democratic forms. However, we must honestly acknowledge that these concepts were later manipulated both Sukarno's guide democracy and Suharto's new orders justified authoritarianism by claiming to follow indigenous Indonesian democratic traditions. This historical experience teaches us an important lesson. Indigenous cultural concepts can enrich democracy, but they can also be manipulated to undermine it. The task is to critically engage with both Western democratic theory and local traditions, talking what is valuable from it while remaining vigilant against their misuse.
Oligarchy and capture in Indonesian democracy. You mentioned that despite democracy procedure, political power remains concentrated among wealthy elite with the enormous cost of campaign. Given this reality, what specific implementable policy reform would you recommend to democratize political competition and reduce the influence of money in Indonesian politics? I ask this because the previous attempts at electoral reform have often been weakened or by the very elite to benefit from the current system. How can we break this cycle?
This question goes to the heart of the national democracy. Most difficult challenge. You are right that refused reform attempts are taken in first track. However, I believe several policy directions have made meaningful progress if implemented with political will and civil society pressure. First, comprehensive campaign finance reform is essential. This should include several elements. 1. Implement strict spending limits for campaigns with severe penalties for violation. Currently, spending limits exist on paper but are rarely enforced. 2. Require real-time disclosure of campaign contribution during campaign, not just afterward. Voters should know who is funding candidates before they vote. 3. Increase public funding for campaigns to reduce candidates' dependence on wealthy donors. This could be financed through a small percentage of the state budget and distribute based on party performance in previous election.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nazwa, for those explanations, and thank you to our listeners for their comprehensive responses. Okay, now I would like to invite Muhammad Alfierado to pose your questions. Please process.
Thank you, moderator. Guys, my first question concerns the element of democratic backsliding that was discussed extensively in the presentation. You mentioned that the 2024 election raised concern about democratic quality, particularly regarding the constitutional presentation allowing Gibran to run Presiden Jokowi clear favorito. Some observers argue this represent democratic backsliding, while others claim it is simply normal developing democracy. My question is, how do we distinguish between normal democratic imperfection and democratic backsliding? And the second question is, given that Indonesia has one of the world's largest social media population, over 190 million internet users, how should Indonesia democracy adapt to this digital transformation? Thank you.
Okay, let me answer the first question. This is an excellent analytical question that gets a crucial definitional issue. You are absolutely right. That all democracies have imperfections, and we must avoid setting impossible standards not real world democracy could meet. Political scientists have developed several frameworks for distinguishing democratic imperfection from backsliding. Let me outline key distinctions. The first, directions and trajectory matter more than a single incident. One problematic elections or no questionable judicial decision does not constitute backsliding. What matters is the pattern over time. Is democratic quality improving, staying stable, or declining? Backsliding is a process, not an event. Second, intentionality and systematicity are key factors. Random errors or isolated case of corruption are imperfections, but systematic efforts to weaken democratic institutions deliberately undermining judicial independence, strategically attacking free press, systematically restricting civil society. This indicates backsliding. The third, we can identify specific warning signs that show the trigger concern regarding institutions.
This is perhaps the most forward-looking and important question for Indonesia democracy future. You correctly identified that digital technology is fundamentally ambiguous. It can strengthen or weaken democracy depending on how it is governed and used. Policy recommendation for Indonesia. One. The first is media literacy education. Second, platform regulation, but carefully. Third, independent fact-checking. Fourth, electoral social media rules. And fifth, digital right protections. Ultimately, technology is a tool. It amplifies existing democratic tendencies, both positive and negative. The quality of Indonesia's digital democracy will depend on the quality of our institution, the vigilance of our citizens, and the wisdom of our policies. Thank you.
Thank you to both questioners for your thought-provoking questions and to our three presenters for their comprehensive and honest responses. Thank you very much to our presenters, questioners, and clinical support team, and also to all of you for listening and joining our seminar today. We have learned that democracy is not only about election, but also about participation, accountability, and respect for human rights. We saw how Indonesia has made progress since the reformation era, but also faced challenges such as corruption, oligarchy, and political polarization. The key message is clear: democracy is a journey, not on behalf of our team, I thank you once again because this concept